there. Ah, somebody did it for me. Thank you. That one has a button on the base on the far right. That bottom right button turns it on, turns it off, and then it shows up on my list here. So, are we ready to call the meeting to order? I don't have my agenda. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
All right, so call to order, roll call. Let's have a roll call, please.
Chelsea, do I call everybody?
Yes.
Chairman Myjack,
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Thompson,
Here?
Member Burdette.
Here.
Member Tucker.
Here.
Member Walter.
Here.
Member Delgado. Member Browning.
Here.
Alternate Member Young.
Here.
Alternate Member Kosi.
Here.
Very good. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think we have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, at least I count. We will have a quorum. Oh, goodness. Shall we have approval of the minutes? That's up next.
If I may, go ahead with the,
You're gonna have to speak louder.
Am I not heard? Okay. I'll try to speak into the microphone better. Is that better? Thank you. All right. So now we have the approval of the minutes. I'll take a motion on that regard.
Move to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Yes.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussions? Okay, well, hearing none, shall we? You do have a discuss, okay?
I do have one question.
Yes,
Sir,
ma'am.
when you speak, can you put your microphone on?
You need to turn your mic on and apparently speak directly into it.
Yes, pardon me. On page 6, second paragraph, it talks about a citizen of Cocoa, Florida, suggested that there might be, I'm sorry, that is not the one I wanted to. My apologies. Page 5. I got this last night, and I'm rushing through this speed read all 86 pages. So the only item I have a question about is this on page 5. It's second item. Talks about, it says, Case St. Ange, Titusville, Florida, made a clarification in response to Mr. Johnson, stating that Councilwoman Jolene Nelson is being replaced. Ms. St. Ange said she will remain as a council person for 2 more years. I was a little bit confused by that. It says she's being replaced, but she'll remain a council member for 2 more years. Is that the way that it's supposed to read? Can somebody
She's not
explain?
being replaced, but apparently Stan made a statement that she was. Kay was just trying to correct that.
I didn't understand that, and I was asking if it needed to be corrected with a word change or something.
It sounds like it needs to be corrected. It might be that Case St. Ange, in response to Mr. Johnson, stated that Councilwoman Jolene Nelson was not being replaced.
That sounds good.
That sounds more like what happened.
So we just need to insert the word not.
Yeah, was not, is not.
Okay,
Yeah.
just trying to clarify that one item, that's all I had.
No, I would agree. That changes the whole meaning of the sentence. We have that, Lori? Are we?
Mr. Johnson stated that Jolene Nelson was being replaced.
Correct.
So Ms. St. Ange corrected him.
Correct.
I think it's okay the way
Yeah,
it's written.
I mean, it reads correctly to me.
Stating that Councilwoman Jolene Nelson is being replaced.
That's what
That's what
Stan
Mr.
said.
Johnston said.
Okay, all right.
Oh, so Ms. St. Ange's statement was a correction of, I get it. Okay,
Yes.
thanks. Thank you for the clarification.
Is it a roll call vote on minutes? It can be. Okay, we'll make it a roll call vote.
Chairman Majak,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Thompson,
Yes,
Member Browning,
Yes.
Member Burdette,
Yes.
Member Kosi,
Yes.
Member Tucker,
Yes.
Member Walter.
Yes. I guess we should move on with the swearing in, since we're actually voting on minutes.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to take over, Chuck?
I would like to do that, yes. Thank you. I'd like to invite Mr. Robert Walter to the podium. Good afternoon. Evening. Sir, if you could please place your right hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I state your name,
Robert Allen Walter,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
and government
and government
of the United States
of the United States
and state of Florida
and state of Florida
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
domestic or foreign,
domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear
and that I will bear
true faith,
true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance
loyalty, and allegiance
to the same,
to the same,
and that I am entitled
that I am entitled
to hold office
to hold office
under the Constitution,
under the Constitution,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
all of the duties
all of the duties
of the office
of the office
of the Titusville Environmental Commission
of the Titusville Environmental Commission
of the City of
of
Titusville,
the City of Titusville,
on which I am about to enter.
and in which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much,
Thank
and
you.
congratulations. Please take your seat in the appointed position. Next to you, Mr. Jonathan Burdette. Sir, please repeat after me. I state your name,
Jonathan Burdette,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will perform,
that I will perform,
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
and government
and government
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Florida
and the state of Florida
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
domestic or foreign,
domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear
and that I will bear
true faith,
true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance
loyalty, and allegiance
to the same,
and
that I am entitled
that I am entitled
to hold office
to hold office
under the
under
Constitution,
the Constitution,
that I will faithfully perform
that I will faithfully perform
all of the duties
all of the duties
of the office
of the office
of the Titusville Environmental Commission
of the Titusville Environmental Commission
of the City of Titusville,
of the City of Titusville,
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And thank you, congratulations. You also may take your seat. Lastly, I would like to invite Mr. Michael Browning to join me here at the podium. Thank you, sir. Hi, please repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Michael Browning,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
and government
and government
of the United States
of the United States
and state of Florida
and state of Florida
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
domestic or foreign,
domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear
and that I will bear
true faith,
true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance
loyalty, and allegiance
to the same,
to the same,
and that I am entitled
and that I am entitled
to hold office
to hold office
under the Constitution,
under the Constitution,
that I will faithfully perform
that I will faithfully perform
all of the duties
all of the duties
of the office
of the office
of the Titusville Environmental Commission
of the Titusville Environmental Commission
of the City of
of
Titusville,
the City of Titusville,
on which I am about to enter.
of which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And thank you, sir, for completing your swearing in. Thank you all for allowing me to perform this.
Turning on the microphone. That seems to be my biggest thing, is remembering to turn on the microphone and then speaking into it. So next up, we have petitions and requests from the public. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on a non-agenda item? Yes, Tony? Please approach your podium.
Historic Norwood House. There were a lot of things said in this room last night. Disturbing comments. Disparaging remarks, all based on true facts. And I'm here to point out that last night was really I won't go there again, we were all there. There are a couple of new members on this TEC who have no idea what you have stepped into because you have not been in the room in the past 5 years. And I have to watch this group struggle to be heard, to try and save the environment of Titusville, only to be called by Ms. Stokel, who sits in your seat over there. They've become advocates. Of course you've become advocates. You are advocating for the rights of Titusville citizens to have a clean and healthy environment. And despite what staff is doing, Brad Parrish, to push us into multi-family people living on top of each other like rats in a scientific experiment, you know how those things end. And I am just livid with the process. And Mr. Walker, or Walker, have I got that right? Walter, with a T, like Tony. I'll remember that from now on. You stood up here and you said, TEC is a city board. It is not just a city board. It is a place where we try to save the environment of the Indian River Lagoon and the northern parts of Brevard County and Jiminy Cricket, God help me, the state of Florida and the United States and maybe the world itself. This is not just a city board, and your task is not just to protect Larice, who sits over here, and Brad Parrish and the planning department in their push to overdevelop. I've said enough. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I am so emotional, but I was so upset by several things that happened last night. And to be said that we made disparaging remarks when we spoke the truth about criminal intentions and people who committed those acts being appointed and rallied and bravoed. It's just really disgusting and sad. And I'm sorry I'm so emotional. I don't come often. I am a cheerleader for the advisory boards, and I will continue to cheerlead because despite what Ms. Stokel says, yes, we're advocates. We're advocates for the causes that we're standing for. You are standing for the environment of Titusville, North Brevard, North Florida, the Space Coast, the United States, the world. We've got to work on this. And to think it's just the city of Titusville because you've been asked to come and suddenly appear to serve when people in this room have been appearing for years. And I've never seen you, Mr. Burdette, but I do like your credentials. And I do like the fact that you want to push for native plants to be in the developments that Mr. Parrish is pushing on our city. So I appreciate that. And I'm very happy to see that they realized what a treasure we have in Miss Laura Lee Thompson. Oh my God, it was so close. And Miss Tucker, you're very quiet all the time, but when push comes to shove, you stand up for the environment, and I appreciate that. And I'd like to be able to say that about Mr. Browning. And I hardly know you, sir. You're very quiet. You should become much more active. Thank you very much for letting me speak. I apologize for my emotions, but I feel very strongly And I've had some very upsetting things happen to me recently from Brevard County, and then a miraculous, so I'm in an emotional roller coaster, and I'm very happy that we now have finally seated the 4 people on the board so that we can get back to the work of saving our environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Schifalo. Next, or is there a comment maybe, or, no? No? Not yet. Please.
Vicki Conklin, Royal Oak Drive. Perhaps you intend to address this, Mr. Myjack, but I just want to make sure that we have some form of gratification plaque for Mr. Tom Perez and Miss Yvette Fliss, because I too, as Tony, we have been attending these meetings every month. We don't just show up when it's time that somebody's asked us to come and be appointed. We are advocates for what's happening in Titusville, and we're advocates for trying to make it better. And I applaud this board. So those of you who haven't, this is your first time here, actually, so it's kind of interesting. But anyway, Godspeed, and we'll hope for the best. But in the meantime, it's going to be really hard to fill the shoes of Mr. Tom Perez with the qualifications and experience that he's brought to this board, as well as Yvette Fliss. They both have a world of experience that have really been so wonderful for this board. So we don't know about what's going to happen here, but we wish the best. But I want to make sure these 2 folks are really recognized in a public forum, not just here. We really need to make sure we recognize them and thank them for their service. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad, can we have put in a recommendation like that to have some kind of gratification award sent for Tom Perez and for Yvette Fliss for their service on the TEC?
Yes, if you have a recommendation to council, we can go forward and do that.
Okay. Shall we talk about it at the reports at the end of the meeting?
You could do that, yes.
All right, let's do that. Anybody else? Non-agenda items? Going once, going twice. On to old business. Let's see. The Natural Resources Public Engagement Project Report of Draft Recommendations. And the staff is recommending the approval of the Natural Resources Report to City Council. Where shall we begin?
So on page 11 of your packet, you'll see the report. I'm just going to read the last paragraph in here. You have seen a draft of this report already in September. If you recall, this project started last year based on council's recommendation or direction to staff to find comprehensive plan amendments that were appropriate that were desirable, rather, from the draft 2040 plan, the Titusville Tomorrow plan that we were working on for several years, and see what we can incorporate into our current comprehensive plan. There were 4 amendments. We are working on the first 3 already, halfway done with those related to the future land use, housing, and transportation, and the 4th one are primarily environmental related. So that's what this project is. So we worked with a consultant to see what's the best path forward. They recommended a public engagement process and a summary report, which is what this is. And so this started out with a kickoff last year, individual meetings, interviews with each of the Titusville Environmental Commission members, a workshop with the TEC and the public, and an online idea wall or website where information was provided by the public to the consultant. The report was presented to you in September. You had some recommendations. The consultant made those changes, and we are bringing them back to you, but we also have staff recommendations. So I'm going to point out just a few areas of the recommendations where staff is suggesting some additional language changes, and we've highlighted them in red, either as strike-through or underline. So I'll read this last paragraph here. September 11th, 2024, the TEC reviewed the report and provided several recommendations. The consultant updated this. The staff subsequently made changes to some of the recommendations and explanatory language in the report. If you remember, there was a matrix in there, recommendations and several columns of explanation. The staff added the report references to strategies from the city's Sustainability Action Plan, and closed for TC's review and approval is the final draft with revisions. I do want to remind the commission that this is a blueprint for a long-term strategy. It is not a plan per se. It is a strategy for you to determine what is a priority for you to work on each year as you're going through your work plan. This is basically a work plan for you. So you decide whether out of the recommendations here, which is a priority that you believe is important, and then that you bring that before City Council for them to give us direction to work on it, and then we'll work on it with you. And it could be a combination of these, or it could be one in particular. Page 13 of your packet, you'll see the beginning of the cover sheet of the report. At the end of this discussion, there are some pictures that were provided to us, well, asked of us by former Chairwoman Laura Lee Thompson, and she would like to ask you if you could decide which of those particular pictures of a bridge, which I'll show you later, should be used to replace the cover page here, if you so desire to do that. I'm going to jump now to page 29 of your packet. This is, since we have provided this once before, and I know the 3 new members, this is all brand new to you. I won't go into the summary, which is before this matrix. There's a summary of all the actions that happen with the public engagement process. So I'm just going to go right into the recommendations. So on page 29 of your packet, you'll see the first recommendation. Just so you understand, there's a first column, that's the strategy or consideration. The second column is implementation. So we provided some explanation as to how potentially that could be implemented. The next column is future considerations and resources. Things to consider. Are there resources? Are there grants that are necessary? Are there constraints, staff resources necessary? The next column, called comprehensive plan policy, we tried to identify a comprehensive plan policy that is relevant to this particular strategy or consideration. And the last column is the sustainability action plan. And that includes references to the SAP or the plan that is relevant to this particular strategy or consideration. I do want to recognize Lily Galileo, who's our new sustainability coordinator. She just started with us a few weeks ago. And so she will be working with us on this project and several others, I'm sure. But she went through this report and tried to identify several strategies that are from the Sustainability Action Plan that are relevant to these considerations. So some of this may be new on that last column. I do want to point out on that same page 29, on the top of that matrix, you'll see categories. And next to it in colors, you'll see green, purple, blue, and red, so on. CP is comprehensive plan. So that particular, what we're saying here is that particular strategy or consideration is related to maybe amending the comprehensive plan, or IMP, an implementation project of some sort, LDR, regulation to the code, or it might be strictly related to the Sustainability Action Plan, or the Code of Ordinances, or a public relations effort, or communication. So you see in the first strategy there, it has underneath the strategy category, and then how that could potentially, the category it might fall under is how it could be implemented. On that first strategy, you'll see there, states continue to prioritize funding and seek grant funding for projects that improve water quality of the IRL. In the implementation box, the staff made a slight change there, and you'll see an underline in red. And we also did the same thing in future considerations and resources column. On page 30, you'll see the same thing. This whole matrix is divided out into different categories. So the first category is related to advancing the IRL stormwater quantity and quality improvements projects. So on page 30, again, in the same category, the second recommendation or strategy is identify sources of stormwater discharge into the IRL and prepare plans to reduce the volume and improve the quality of the discharge. On the next column, under implementation, we felt the need to add this language here, an underlined red, to clarify. So we did that throughout this whole matrix. Yes, ma'am.
I hate to interrupt you, but it's really hard to see the page numbers because there's actually two sets of numbers on every page. And the one that's visible is the page number of the report, but when he's saying page 29, it's actually page 29 of 86. And it is on, it has 17, which you can see really well. But if you look, it's in the flowers and things at the bottom. 'Cause I noticed that so the new members were struggling, trying to
Ms. Thompson, there's
locate.
another way you can find the page number. On the bottom of the application that you're using, the viewer that's being used, the PDF viewer, it should have a page number on the bottom of it to tell you which page you're on a PDF.
Actually, it's up in the
Up in the top?
up
Okay,
in
so
the top on the left-hand side. There's
It
a
should
down
be.
arrow and an up arrow and a 29 of 86.
Prints, this is how it prints.
I understand. Oh, that's,
Number here and a number there.
I understand. I'm talking about the PDF viewer should have a box in there to tell you which page you're on, not the actual document itself.
How do you want to go through the comments? Do you want to go through them while you're touching on each point, or do you want us
I'm
to
not-
come back afterwards, or?
I wasn't going to go through all of this. I'm just highlighting the structure of this, especially for the new members, and then just leave it open for questions. But it's up to the commission. If you would like us to go through each of these detailed, we certainly can. Otherwise, I think you've had an opportunity to review it. I know the three new members only got it last night.
Please, yes.
Yeah, the new members have not had an opportunity to even think about looking at this, and I don't see how we can, I mean, if we could spend hours going through it page by page, but I think it would be helpful if the new members had an opportunity to be able to review it and make notes and comments.
You could continue it to your next meeting.
We could punt. I could entertain a motion for a table. Member Walter?
I'll make a motion to table it till the next meeting. It gives us time to overlook it. I didn't receive it until 10 o'clock last night. So, but I would like to review it. I don't want to hold anything up, obviously, because I know you guys have been working on this a long time. But if I could make a motion for, we table this just to our next meeting, I can spend plenty of time looking at it.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Member Browning for discussion. Any comments? Bill, anything down there? No? Okay. All right, well, let's have a roll call vote, please. On tabling the motion.
Member Burdette?
Yes.
Member Browning?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Thompson?
Yes,
Member Kosi,
Yes.
Member Walter?
Yes.
Chairman Majak?
Yes. Well, that makes that easy.
yeah, I'm sorry about that, Brad, but I think they deserve a chance to be able to go through the document.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so get your notes ready for next month. There'll be a test. Okay. New business. We don't have anything under new business. Then we're back on to petitions and requests from the public again. We have where? Well, that's under reports, which is after. Apparently, we have a slightly different agenda than we used to have. This one, according to Brad, is according to our bylaws, which I've asked Brad to bring up on the agenda for next month. One, so that we can add back the section that we used to have about having a point of talking about future agenda items in our agenda. That got removed. And we can go over the functions of the Environmental Commission for our new members, which include being the Water Resources Board, the Sustainability Board, and the Titusville Tree Board. All of that gets wrapped up into our Environmental Commission. And those duties are spelled out in our bylaws, which we'll go over next month as well. So, no petitions. I guess we're on to, oh, sorry, Mary, please. I'm not used to this hand raising. I'm like,
Well, I didn't know, I wasn't planning, I was planning on speaking on the last item. But I just wanted to, I think you all probably, Mary's far, by the way. I live in Cocoa. I hope the new members got the email that I sent about this particular report, and I just wanted to bring to your attention that I was the one who sent the email with the suggested corrections because it appears that there was some sort of miscommunication and the opposite got in the report of what I think it should be. So I just think sometimes you think you're communicating with somebody and no, you're not. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mary. Do we need to fill out cards on the public request? We tabled it, so we'll be talking about it next month.
I think she's talking about, were you talking about the natural resources report? Or-
Yes, I sent you an email. It concerned the report that Brad was just talking about.
That we just tabled.
That,
so-
you know, I really liked the report, but I thought there was just one little thing that needed fixing. And I sent you a little chart. It was an attachment of how I would fix it because it's about something pretty, it's about a comp plan policy that's really, should I say convoluted? It's very complex. And I wanted you just to be aware that it's there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
As far as the report, is the new guy's gonna get a copy of this? That she's talking about?
Mary's email?
I got it in an email.
Right, you did, I did, but the new guys probably didn't. Brad,
No.
could you make sure that they get Mary's forwarded, please? Thank you. Yeah, Mary had a very cogent argument on one of the, a modification to one of the pieces, and when we go over it next month, we'll bring it up for sure. Mary, will you be able to join us next month when we cover this? Thank you. All right. Okay, yes, we're just still there.
Okay. All right, well, I'm about to say the same thing. Stan Johnson, I'm about to say the same thing last night. I sent you an email for those who received that email. This fellow here didn't. Is it Michael?
Yes.
You didn't receive my email. And what I'm asking for is, again, is that the Titusville Environmental Commission would consider to request for the council to stop the unwritten policy that they have now to spray women, children, and babies, and that is with, that's to leave the fountains turned on in ponds that have sewage in them. So in the email that I sent you, it said something to the effect is that we have a policy that Mrs. Nelson shared with us that the city will keep the fountains turned on even if there's sewage in the ponds because it aerates the sewage. Well, I'm against that, and you should be against it too, because the fact is that it sprays, it simultaneously sprays women, children, and babies with sewage. And so that's, you might say that's a killing two birds with one stone, but it's nonsense and foolishness by our city leaders. So I'm asking you to stop this unwritten policy, and I'm here at 6 o'clock, after 6 o'clock, because I thought the meeting started at 6. So I'm sorry I'm here at this time. But I again ask you to do that, although you refused it to it last time, and I'll be coming to you again if you still refuse. I understand that you don't want to upset council, although council says that they are very discouraged that there's been times that people here, such as Tom Perez, have criticized council. And so the city has criticized you, and they have removed Mr. Perez. And for this cause of his clean water and his the act of clean water, which we have over 80%, and that certainly does not look good for those who are with the city manager and city attorney to not do anything to record that document. So if you have any questions, I'd like to receive them. I think the main reason that, the main reason that I've been in jail is because of this, of my revealing of the truth of my findings as a professional engineer of many crimes and many expenditures done by the city, millions of dollars expenditure, unnecessary and worthless, is that done by the city of Titusville. So that's a good reason to put me away, to silence me. So I'm hoping that this board will do something to stop the city from spraying women, children, and babies with sewage. I'm serious. I consider it a no-brainer as a professional engineer, and I consider it as something that the police should act upon to protect the health and safety of our citizens, same as with the fire department. So as far as I'm concerned, as a professional engineer licensed by the state to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public, very similar to what the police and fire department do, is that I'm doing it, and if it were me causing problems with my neighbors, with my sewage, the police department would be putting me in jail. But since the city is guilty in spraying women, children, and babies with sewage, the city police does what? Does nothing. And they will report nothing to the state attorney, although I asked the chief of police, would you please report this to the state attorney? He says no, he's not going to do it. And when I talked to our attorneys, which I thought maybe somebody's here with the attorney, they also will not do anything against the city. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
Actually, Ken, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me a location where I can go down and look at where this is happening? Is it happening all over the city, or is it just a certain location, or?
It happens where there is a pond in a park, in a public park,
Okay,
and where there is a known sewage spill.
all right.
Right now, I have no known sewage spills, but we have ponds, several ponds. We have them in Sandpoint Park, Spaceview Park, and we have at the Senior Center. All three of those ponds have had their fountains on when they have been polluted with sewage, all of them.
Well, thank you. I'll go look at it.
And so it's interesting is that the fountains can be really way high, or they can be 20 feet, or they can be 30 feet in the air.
Well, thank you.
Turning them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
I have a question for Ms. Thompson, Chairman. Am I correct that in November, this came up, and at the time, you had explained that this board, this commission did forward some recommendations to the city council to look at this issue? Do you know, or does Mr. Parrish know if city council took that up, and was there any action taken on this issue at all by city council?
Yes, the city has addressed Mr. Johnson's concerns numerous times, and I know that Public Works, if we need to provide you information about that, we certainly can.
So city council took it up, and I'm not sure I understand. They directed Public Works to,
The issue Mr. Johnson has brought up has been addressed, been corrected, addressed according to requirements of DEP and other standards of operating procedures that we have. So if there's any more specific detail beyond what I've just explained, I can provide that to you after the meeting. I don't have specific answers to you.
fair enough. I'm interested in the resolution if there was a correction made by Public Works or whoever did that. I'd be interested in what that correction was. Thank you, Mr. Parrish.
So I have spoken with Mr. Johnson numerous times about this, and his request of the city council seems reasonable to me. He would like to see a provision in writing that says, in the event of a sewer spill, fountains will be turned off. And I went to the city council during petitions and requests, and I explained that to them, and I said, this is what he's asking for. He wants some kind of thing in writing that says the cities will turn off fountains in the event of a sewer spill. But they don't seem to want to do that. And this commission has made multiple requests to the city, going all the way back to, we asked them to put fences around the stormwater ponds that were highly polluted during the 7 million gallon sewer spill, starting with that. And we've made numerous requests that have not been done. But, as far as what Mr. Johnston wants is pretty reasonable. He wants some kind of writing, some kind of ordinance or something, some kind of direction to staff that if a sewer spill occurs, the fountains will be turned off. It seems simple to me.
Yeah, just turning it on and on to call. Go right ahead.
Well, I think we can have staff come up with some sort of request to Department of Works to come up with a policy. There's no reason we can't come up with a policy. If it's raw sewage, of course, we don't want anybody in it or playing in it. But to fence it off and turn off the fountains is not a really big deal. I mean, I'd like to see some scientific study on it, but I wish you wouldn't refer it to the women, children, and babies. It should be everybody in Titusville, residents and visitors and everybody. It's just not a certain group of people. It's everybody. But I think maybe staff can do a letter from our board to, I guess it would just go to the Public Works Department, that they come up with some sort of policy and let us review it before they put it in place.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I heard Ms. Thompson say that it sounds like the result was less than satisfying. Is that fair to say?
Very.
And I'm hearing Mr. Parrish say that there was some corrective action. Is that the fair way to say it, Mr. Parrish?
We
So
had,
I'm still trying to get up to speed on
well,
what is and what is
let me,
not here. And I'm hearing a corrective action was taken. Was it not good enough?
I believe it was unsatisfactory to Mr. Johnson, and I think to most of us as well. We had discussed it, and actually what we came to a conclusion from part of my travels and others is that we found that bubblers are way more effective and at a fraction the cost of a fountain, whereas the fountain will emit and spray into the atmosphere, and that will in turn douse people in the area with whatever is coming up from the fountain. The bubbler has the advantage of actually moving the whole water column. So when a fountain sprays, it's only the very top surface that gets oxygenated. Literally, the first top few centimeters is what they found. Everything else down below ends up becoming more and more hypoxic as you go lower in the water column. And so putting a bubbler in there allows the whole pond to filter. And this was part of our discussion last month. It was supposed to be on the agenda this time. I've already talked to Brad. It wasn't. I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but we had intended to talk about that in depth today, but it didn't get on the agenda in time. So it will be on the agenda next week. And that's, I think, the beginning of see, we are a policy recommending board. That's our job. It's not Public Works' job to recommend the policy. It's our job. Now, we have to figure out how, and then how to make that recommendation. We make it through to City Council, but we first have to do our own due diligence. So we were going to talk about bubblers in depth, and I think we should still do that because that's the direction we should go. And we can include and incorporate into that recommendation something about sewage spills, and when we have, you know, uncontaminated effluent in the area, then we have a different protocol that comes into play. But we'll need to talk about that and figure out what that is. That's how I'd like to deal with this going forward. If that work for everybody? Okay. Good. Thank you, Stan. All right. So I guess that leaves us any other petitions and requests. If not, we'll head into staff reports. So shall we start with staff?
So if you look on page 72 of your packet, you'll see the report. There are 4 ordinances altogether, but I only included 2 under the staff's report. Again, we brought these before you, the 4 drafts of these ordinances to you several months ago. You made some suggestions, and then you asked for them to be brought back to you for another review prior to them being advertised for public hearings. So we have been working on 2 of them. We've got them here on the attachment, and I'll go through real quick with you. The other 2 we are still working on. So I'll just describe briefly here on page 72 of your packet. There is one particular ordinance, a critical root zone ordinance. Your motion was to recommend to city staff that Michael Browning's recommendations that are in the email that Chairwoman Thompson provided at the November 13th, 2024 meeting, meaning be incorporated into the critical root zone draft ordinance, which we did. However, staff is still researching the costs and benefits of that new CRZ. So this will come back to you, the ordinance itself, with staff's recommendations. In other words, we'll explain to you what staff will say to City Council. On the next ordinance, the canopy and multifamily ordinance, the motion was to recommend to staff that the following language be removed from all places used in the draft ordinance, except projects with a single duplex. The staff disagrees with the TC's recommendation and with including duplexes in a canopy requirement. The City Council approved an advisability directing the staff to identify barriers to infill development in the code and provide remedies. Additional canopy requirements on small lots will discourage the development of small multifamily units such as duplexes on infill lots. So our position on that particular change that you requested on that canopy ordinance, staff doesn't support that. So we want to report that to you because that's what we're going to explain to City Council when this ordinance goes before them. The ordinance is attached for you to review. It is on page 74 of the packet. I'll go through it in just a moment. The next ordinance is on page, I'm reading here on page 73 of your packet, the native landscaping ordinance. So we had to state here, this is not a motion, I guess this was just a comment, and I think there was a nod from the rest of the commission in concurrence with this. Chairman Thompson stated that the CEC recommendations to staff are that in the 8 places where it talks about Brevard native trees, the word Florida native is removed, leaving Brevard native only. And everywhere there are shrubs, ground covers, and grasses are mentioned, they want added to the language that says 50% Brevard native is required. Staff is still researching the costs and benefits of this new 50% native landscaping and Brevard native only vegetation requirement. So we will get back to you with this particular ordinance with staff's opinion about that. So we don't have that particular ordinance attached to this report. Finally, the artificial turf ordinance. Staff requests that TC carefully evaluate this particular ordinance, the draft artificial turf ordinance, and determine if additional standards are necessary. To give you some background, our code basically says that there's a minimum landscaping requirement, and you're not allowed to use artificial vegetation in that minimum required landscaping. But beyond that, there's nothing the code says. And so we've received several requests for variances in some single-family lots and some subdivisions to allow artificial turf. Staff's interpretation was that that's prohibited. They received those variances from the Board of Adjustment in various ways. I know some members of the commission did attend a more recent Board of Adjustment meeting related to a variance, and I think the board learned a lot from that presentation from some of the members here of this commission. The ordinance, which is on page 83 of your packet, I'll go through. We would very much like your opinion. We will, and of course, we'll relay that opinion to City Council. So before going on, I'm going to go back to the multifamily canopy ordinance, which is attached to your agenda, page 74 of your packet. And you'll see the title and whereas clauses, and you go on to the next page, on page 75, and you'll see the strike-through underlined language. This indicates how the code will now look if adopted. So residential subdivisions, including townhomes and multifamily projects, we have in parentheses, excluding single duplex units and properties meeting one of the specified characteristics described in Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Element Policy 1.7.7 for infill development. You had requested that language be removed. Staff is in disagreement with that. On page 77 of your packet, you'll see further changes to the tree ordinance. Same language. And then again on page 78 of your packet, you'll see language related to that single duplex. And again on page 79 of your packet. I think that was the only recommendation that you had the last time you saw this ordinance. So with that, you've heard staff's opinion. If you have a recommendation of how to address that, we'll certainly entertain it. Otherwise, this ordinance will be, we'll like your recommendation as to whether to go forward with this ordinance or not. And then we'll see how this can be advertised and go before your council. Or it may be just brought before them. We're not sure what that decision is going to be yet.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see who we got. Okay, Member Thompson, you have your light on?
So I'm confused because we were supposed to address the critical root zone, but then you said that we didn't address it. Staff was still analyzing it, yet you've presented an ordinance to us for approval that the critical root zone has not been changed.
We didn't provide it on the attachment here, so I'll bring that to you in a future meeting.
Yeah, but it's in this ordinance that you're asking us to approve. On page 76.
The two top, yeah, so they'll have to be adopted separately because otherwise it'll be confusing. There'll be a conflict. The two different topics. So this particular ordinance is addressing only the canopy, and then the other critical root zone is addressing only the critical root zone. So if this ordinance that we have here before you goes forward, it won't address critical root zone. That other ordinance will address that particular section.
So will you change the language in this ordinance when the other ordinance passes?
This ordinance will change the language proposed here. If the second ordinance is adopted, it'll change the code as well.
They're doing a two-step.
Yeah, because it'll be confusing to put them together in one ordinance.
But they're together in this ordinance here.
What you have on page 76 of your packet is the existing language. That's not stricken through, that's just in black there. typeface, that is existing language. That's not being touched in this particular ordinance. Because this ordinance is only addressing the canopy question, recommendation that TC had. The language, the ordinance that we originally presented to you about changing the critical root zone is a different ordinance, which we'll bring to you at a future meeting.
Okay, but will this be corrected then when the next ordinance passes? Or when we talk about it?
Yeah, it will present it to you based on how you recommended it, and you'll see it at a future meeting.
I didn't understand that there would be two separate ordinance submissions. So that clarifies what I'm seeing on page 76, Brad. So can I say that I know there are people that are concerned because we have pending development proposals that we get this critical root zone issue straightened out sooner rather than later. I have to confess, I don't know what sooner is. Later could be sometime, that it goes to council sometime after hundreds and hundreds of acres worth of plans have been submitted and are being reviewed by development review staff. Ms. Thompson, we talked about this and you had a meeting with Mr. Parrish in November. And I thought, maybe I was wrong, that we were going to get a draft of the changes because what had first been submitted as a correction to the memos that were submitted about how to change the CRZ, they still didn't get it right. And I thought we were going to get something that would say, okay, we got it right now. And here's what, at some point when we do the two-part submission, this will be the corrected version that will be submitted to council.
Sure, we'll bring that to you again at a future meeting.
But that's a
That new
separate
draft.
ordinance from this one.
Correct. Yeah,
But yet this one has the wrong language in it.
Yes.
But you're asking us to approve something that has the wrong language in it
No, ma'am.
on the faith that it's going to get changed later?
No, they're two separate ordinances. This is how we presented it. We showed you all four ordinances earlier. We're only showing you two of the four right now. The four ordinances that we showed you was the critical root zone, the canopy in multifamily, the native vegetation, and the turf ordinance. Right now, I'm only showing two of those four. The canopy and the critical root zone were two different ordinances. We had them separated out because there were two different topics. As far as which one gets approved or adopted first, it's up to City Council how they want to do that. We were ready to bring you the canopy one now. The canopy ordinance was never in itself was going to, if we're going to address the critical root zone now, what you're asking for is one ordinance to address two topics. We believe that's going to be very confusing and difficult for us. So we decided the best approach was to separate them out. So this particular ordinance you see here on page 75 is addressing only the language related to the canopy for multifamily development for tree preservation. It does not address or correct anything related to the critical root zone in this particular ordinance. No.
So are you
That
going to
ordinance will
take
come.
the critical root zone language completely out of this ordinance and just have a critical root zone ordinance? I mean, I would feel better if the critical root zone language had a red strike through it. So, I mean, this might be how we end up with these convoluted, mismatch of things between our comp plan and our ordinances, and I can see where this could just kind of slide by and not get addressed.
Well, that separate ordinance will come before you, and then based on your recommendation to City Council, they'll make that action. If they adopt that ordinance, then that section will change in the code. But that's up to City Council. The reason we didn't bring it before you now is because we're still evaluating its implications. Yeah. Just so you know, too, that critical root zone language, the suggestion to make that change, was addressed and brought up during the whole process when we were the city was going through and reevaluating and updating its tree canopy or tree preservation language or ordinance. And that was a 2.5-year process, and there was a negotiation that was done. And what you saw here in this language is what was adopted as a result of that. There was an attempt to do something more aggressive than that, but the compromise was that don't go that far. So what's being asked for right now in this critical root zone ordinance, which is not on your agenda here, I didn't bring it to you tonight, had been talked about already and had been resolved through that compromise. So bringing it up now is new. It's already been addressed once before, now we're bringing it up again. So that's what council is going to have to understand.
I just had, Mr. Parrish, I was just confused, I think, because this page, page 76, the CRZ business is included in this package.
Yes, because
So I thought this was something that we were reviewing, that this is imminently going to be put forward towards council.
this language here is already existing, so it's not something
Right.
council's considering,
I recognize that, and but it's in the package, and I wondered why it's in the package. It was a little bit confusing.
Because when we create an ordinance or amending a section, you're amending that section. So page 75, you'll see section, it says section 2, but underneath it says what section of the code is amending. Section 30-31, title Intent, General Standards and Definitions. All of these subparagraphs, A, B, C, D, E, and F, and so on, are all part of that same section. So when we create an ordinance, we include the entire section of the code into it. We don't take certain paragraphs here and there. You have to include a proper ordinance that's supposed to have the entire section that is being amended, whether it's a paragraph or a sentence or the whole thing.
How would you like us to go forward with this?
I'm just curious if what your opinion is of the change as related to applying the canopy requirement to multifamily developments. You've requested that, but staff is recommending that we keep the single duplex language. If you disagree with that, we need to make sure that council understands that. And that's all that would be brought to city council related to this ordinance. It won't be addressing critical root zone. That, again, that's another ordinance.
Member Thompson?
So, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. So the main canopy, adding canopy to the apartment complexes and the larger multifamily units, that is still in play, right?
Correct.
This only addresses small infill lots.
The exception, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the larger canopy requirement for the large multifamily developments is still coming.
Yes. That's what's proposed in this language, in this ordinance, as per TC's recommendation to city council and council's direction to staff.
Right, so the only difference from what we recommended was single-family homes and infill lots, and they're, what, 2 acres and smaller? Are there any comments before we make a vote on it from the public present? Do we have any cards turned in? Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and open up the public hearing and call the cards on this, please.
Okay, Kay St. Ange?
I do want to point on page 77 of your packet, you'll see the minimum canopy requirement. Is that little table in there? That'll probably be the easiest thing to look at, to understand what is the minimum canopy requirement, and now it's going to apply to all residential development, with some exceptions.
Yes? Okay. Kay St. Ange, Maryland Avenue. Since in November, the city had staff had the language in this amended tree protection ordinance for multifamily to include multifamily. They said under 3031B, general standards, number 1, it said residential subdivisions including townhomes and multifamilies, and then it put in parentheses, excluding single duplexes. And then it goes on and read, are required to meet the minimum requirements. But you will notice that now they put in that parentheses, they put additional words since November. They put in excluding single duplex units, and they put in and properties meeting one of the specified characteristics described in comprehensive plan, future land use element policies 1.77 for infill developments. That was added since November. Quite a phrase. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that you understood that, and then I want to go back to my presentation for tonight. I sent you an email, but I have since changed my stance a little bit, okay? So I just wanted you to be aware of that. But for all of the new folks as well, I want to start at the beginning because I don't know that they got my email. Anyways, more and more, we are seeing large multifamily projects and townhome projects being built in Titusville, resulting in hundreds of acres of tree canopy loss. We were able to get in 2021, for their understanding, we were able to get a tree protection ordinance that required for residential subdivisions, 25% of the development area in tree canopy. But at that point in time, council was not willing to require 25% of the development area in tree canopy for multifamily or commercial or industrial. Now, since 2021, now it's 2025, we are asking them to require tree canopy requirements for multifamily as well as the single-family residential. So that's what this whole ordinance is about, adding on multifamily. And council has said they are willing to consider adding on multifamily tree canopy requirements for multifamily, 25% of development area for multifamily. So, since the tree protection ordinance was approved in 2021, single-family developments haven't been being built because it requires tree canopy, I guess. I don't know why, or maybe they built enough single-family, who knows. But anyways, we are seeing many, many more large multifamily projects and townhome projects being built in Titusville, resulting in hundreds of acres of tree canopy loss. Council has indicated their willingness to amend the tree protection ordinance to include townhomes and multifamily. It is critical that tree canopy be required in 25% of development area multifamily to reduce the large-scale destruction of tree canopy that is currently occurring. Per the report to council, staff was directed to identify barriers by council, to identify barriers to infill development and find remedies. The staff report indicates, quote, additional canopy requirements on small lots will discourage the development of small multifamily units such as duplexes on infill lots. So that's why they included some wording in the parentheses, excluding single duplexes, and went on to talk about the comprehensive plan. Yet the draft amended ordinance provides no size definition for the properties to be excluded from tree canopy. So in the report to council, they say small. But in the ordinance language, there's no indication of small or how you define small. There's no word small at all in it. Without a change in wording to this draft amendment, single duplex units built on any size property and infill developments on any size property could be excluded from the tree canopy requirements just by meeting one of the characteristics in policy 1.77. Policy 1.77 of the comprehensive plan does not talk about the size. It doesn't say small infill, doesn't say small single duplexes. Therefore, since sending you an email, I have concluded the draft amendment should be reworded to provide size limits to those properties excluded from tree canopy requirements. So here's the wording that I came up with. I know I'm going to need a little more time, but I wanted to include these other three gentlemen, if you would grant me a little more time. You okay, Laura Lee? All right. So this is the draft language that I tried to come up with. So this is section 3031B1 of the tree ordinance, and they use this language over and over again, but I want to point this out to you. Residential subdivisions, including townhomes and multifamily projects, and here's the parentheses, and it says excluding single duplex units. But here's the change that I want to incorporate. On properties 2 acres or less. We need to define these properties, the size of these properties. And multifamily projects on properties 2 acres or less that satisfy comprehensive plan future land use element policy 1.77 for infill developments, into parentheses. So you see, all I've changed is adding the 2 acres or less to these definitions. Otherwise, these could be huge. The infill development has no definition of size. We need to specify the size. So I'm hoping that you will consider that, and this wording should be applied throughout the ordinance. It says this wording over and over again, and I chose 2 acres or less of this size because of the policy 1.77 number 2 mentions 2 acres. That's where or less. That's why I came up with it. So I hope you're following this. And it's just really critical to me, and I would hope that the amendment to require tree canopy requirements for multifamily and townhome complexes need not be held up due to a lack of a clear definition of the size. I'm hoping you will suggest to staff tonight to add in this 2 acres or less. But I don't want it to hold it up going to council, because this is a big opportunity to include multifamily tree canopy requirements. But please, if you would, suggest to staff that this be put into the parentheses part. I'm going to read it again. Excluding single duplex units on properties 2 acres or less and multifamily projects on properties 2 acres or less that satisfy comprehensive plan future land use element policy 1.77 for infill development. So that 2 or 3 words, it can make a huge difference, because they're not defining the size of infill. And when they say if it fulfills one characteristics of policy 1.77, that's talking about a large area in Titusville that could qualify for one of these different listed things under
Okay,
policy
thank you.
1.77. So we need to make sure this infill is defined as
Yes.
small, 2 acres or less. You
Thank
got
you.
it?
Yes.
Any
got it.
questions? All right.
I do
don't
have
want-
staff, though.
Okay,
So-
staff, I hope they'll do that.
Is it redundant? Because 177.2 is part of 177. If you reference 177, are we already talking about 2 acres or less? Or is there a benefit or conflict if we add it here as well?
I understand what Kay is saying. When you read it, it says excluding single-family duplex units and properties meeting one of the specified characteristics. I think that's what she's concerned about. And so when you look at the specified characteristics, there's several characteristics, and one of them is at 2 acres. So the interpretation could be you only have to meet one of them in order to qualify that exception. So I think what she's asking for is to include a specific minimum lot size in this language.
Yes.
Okay, if that's what the TC would like to do, we'll make that change and provide that to City Council as your recommendation.
Okay, what do you guys think? Is that a reasonable, any discussion? Are there more cards? Oh,
Yes, there's several.
well, let's hold off on that. All right, next card, please.
Tony Shiflow.
I apologize, Tony. How many more cards do we have?
2.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Shifalo Tropic Street, in the heart of the area that is being targeted by this infill ordinance design. I don't know, Brad, why you're doing this to me. I thought we had a relationship going. As a citizen to city planner, because I live and own a historic house in the area that is most impoverished by the census. There's 2 districts, and this is now being the West Titusville for you guys. This is all for you guys that are new and haven't been around at all to hear any of this. And I suggest you go into the history before you start making rulings on this board. This is what I was speaking about the other night. You don't know what you're getting into. Multifamily. I usually agree with Ms. St. Ange because I am on the Titusville Tree Team and I admire her research and the depth of her knowledge and the depths that she will go into to pull the facts together. And I just want to point, I guess what I want to do here, I don't have a prepared speech, so I'm going to preamble. I think that this infill 1.77 blah, 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 is designed specifically, Mr. Parrish, to target the West Titusville area because this is where the most properties are that have been emptied due to urban renewal and we're on the other side of the railroad tracks and downtown doesn't have any place else to go. This is going to be the in-town living. We're going to make a walkable, livable, like Winter Park area out of West Titusville across the railroad tracks. I don't think so. These people don't want that, and they are organizing. So the infill properties that this goes to talk about, I think we should maintain the buffer zones and the setbacks, no matter what size the property, because you know a 2-acre property, one city block over there, the block between Main Street, Canaveral, Dummett, and Tropic is just under 1 acre. And if you put that across the street with the Boggs Gas or the next block, the next location over, there you've got 2 acres. And so we're looking at now a possible, because of the Live Local Act, you got to connect all the dots. It's not just the infill. The infill is to go along with the Live Local to allow ultra density in areas that have been pre-settled as single-family homes in neighborhoods where people went around on their bicycles, their kids play with their kids across the street. In my neighborhood, the guy across the street and the guy over here, their kids went to high school together. They're grown, married, and they bring their children home to play together. And Brad wants to make this now not just a neighborhood street, but a main street like South Street, Garden Street, and Park Avenue. I have been opposing that. So these things, you have to watch all these little all these little things. The ordinance about the infill, that sounds great. Let's redevelop these areas that have empty lots after all these years. But let's don't put multifamily, let's don't cram 10, 12, 15, I think it is, up to 15 units per acre. Let's don't cram that in there. Let's have maybe a duplex. I'll tell you a little story because I have just a few minutes, please. I live in a historic house that is a single family home, despite the fact that at one time they must have had boarders because people still come. Can I rent a room? Next door was a house that I met the woman whose grandfather built the house. And then some greedy developer, whom I won't name, but we all know, bought the place, developed it into 3 apartments. And now the German lady who lives on one end has a dog, and the people that rent over here have a dog, and the people in the middle have a dog. And the people over here open their door and let the dog just go out and poop. And the German lady over here, being a German lady, she's very particular. She gets her shovel and she goes out to where the dog has pooed in the yard and takes it and throws it into the driveway of the woman who just opens the door. These are renters. These are 3 different families who've been crowded into what was a single family home. I think that we should not have infill that allows multifamily structures where there should be maybe at most a duplex. Thank you. That's my point.
Thank you, Ms. Schifolo. Next card.
Mary Spar.
Mary Spar, Coco.
Welcome.
Before I make a comment on the ordinance, I'd like to state that I think that the last two speakers are discussing two different things. The immediately previous speaker is discussing the fact that we need good standards for what kind of new development to place in infill areas. That is a very important topic. But what Kay was talking about was, should there be canopy requirements in small lots in infill areas? And that's a whole different thing. We're talking, should there be trees? And then another part of the code addresses what should be developed in infill areas. So they're two different things. And obviously, I'm sure you can see the merits of both points of view. But let's get back to the topic at hand, which is, should there be canopy requirements for multifamily? And as Kay pointed out, a lot of multifamily developments have been proposed and developed since the tree ordinance was in place. It wasn't too long after it was passed when I realized how easy it was for a developer to actually provide the canopy, because they don't have to worry about providing these canopy areas excluding single family lots. But it's pretty easy, and I think it'd be a great way for Titusville to get the edge on the competition with all these apartment complexes. So, with that being said, I am 100% in agreement with Kay's suggestion as a way to accommodate staff's point of view and continue the journey of creating a compromise tree ordinance, which is what we have. It is a compromise. It took a long time to develop. And as Kay pointed out, we need to get this done. Let's get this off our plate. In fact, Brad even indicated that he would be amenable to limiting the canopy requirements in a way that excludes single duplex units on properties 2 acres or less, and multifamily projects on properties 2 acres or less. So I totally agree with Kay, and future land use policy 1.77 provides a definition of infill. If staff only says that it has to meet one of the specified characteristics described in that policy, and I believe, there's quite a number of them, it's not clear that in addition, the project at hand has to meet the definition of an infill development to be excluded. So I am going to take the liberty of giving staff a copy of the wording that Kay worked hard on and thought about for a long time. In the parentheses there, for canopy area requirements for multifamily, we want to say, can I continue for about a
Please
minute?
go ahead.
Excluding single duplex units on properties 2 acres or less, and multifamily projects on properties 2 acres or less that satisfy comprehensive plan policy, comprehensive future land use element policy 1.77 for infill development. And as a final thought, I certainly hope that you will move to have this corrected and go to council without delay, as members on this commission have other changes for the tree ordinance, and we need to get this one over with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more? Or are we done?
Stan Johnston.
Stan, okay.
May I have that handout? That's out. That handout is from my, what I meant to say in you. So it's from the email. But I'm going to talk to you about me as a professional engineer. Now, I've done numerous subdivisions in the town as an engineer of record and numerous site plans. And I've never done one of these site plans in accordance with this canopy requirement, and it scares me. It scares me because when I draw a canopy of a tree, I'm also on somebody else's property, or I'm also covering, maybe covering, if I say the mature tree, then I'm covering part of somebody's roof, which may be even, I don't know, maybe even adjacent house with a roof. And then we're talking about, when we talk about that, we're talking about like Pacific Palisades. If there's going to be a big wind coming through here and the fire. So there's some people I know who, when they have when they come and they buy a house with trees on it, what they automatically do is they cut down the big oaks and all the trees near the house. And some of them people just take all the trees down. But again, I'm thinking of the complication. I don't know how you're going to do your mathematics on these tree canopies when you draw them, because trees generally don't stay right on, the canopy isn't just on one lot. I mean, if it's 100-foot by 100-foot lot, it's going on somebody else's property also. So I'm just sharing with you is that my concern is that I don't know how you're considering overlapping canopy and canopy in consideration of fire codes and fire. But it scares me. I would not have a pine tree very close to my house because of when they go, they really go. But an oak tree feels good. But my daughter just had, less than a year ago, she had an oak limb fall on her house, and it was over $30,000 of damage. She had a nice canopy. She doesn't now, though. So I'll let it go at that because I know you've got a lot of consideration to do. And I don't know how it's going to be done when it gets down to the real details of it, drawing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Is that the end of the cards?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we bring it back to the board for discussion. Don't everybody, fall over each other running forward.
I have a comment. I appreciate, well, first let me say that I'm in agreement with staff's exclusions and also with Kay's qualification, if you will, trying to pin that down a little bit. It's possible that a single duplex could be on a 15, 20 acre property. How do you control the removal of, 100-year-old live oaks It just seems like, and I think, Brad, you said you thought that was appropriate to put a 2-acre qualification or max on the size of the infill property?
It would be consistent with a recent ordinance that council approved, actually just last night. It was an infill-related type ordinance based on a direction they gave us, where we allow for the reduction of side buffers to be consistent with building setbacks on properties that are zoned multifamily and are 2 acres or less. So if this is the desire of the TEC to have a clarification of acreage for this exclusion, we can understand that.
That would be something I would like to see. It is option number 2. I pulled up the comprehensive plan in 177, and what it actually says is on item 177.2 is that within an area that contains lots of 2 acres or less, where 80% or more of the lots or tracts are developed or have been for at least 20 years. But if you're not going after that one, if you're going after 4 or 5, then that 2-acre minimum doesn't apply. So putting it in the tree ordinance, I think, is as Kay suggested, is the right way to do that. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion that we accept the exclusions that were added to this East Canopy area requirements by the city with the added qualification of the 1772, which talks about 2-acre, and it's a max,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Laura Lee seconds. Shall we discuss? Seems like we're already made up our mind. Okay, well, then let's have a roll call vote then.
Member Walter?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Thompson?
Yes.
Member Kosi?
Yes.
Member Burdette?
Yes.
Member Browning?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Chairman Majek?
Yes. Hey, universal.
Thank you. So that ordinance will go before city, we'll present it before city council either as just for input or for advertising. I believe that will include you as in that advertising as well, so there'll be a public hearing before you with this ordinance.
Okay.
The next item that we've attached in here just for your input is the artificial turf ordinance. And that's on page 83 of your packet. We would strongly appreciate any comment on this, whether you're in support of this or recommend denial or something else. Your input would be much appreciated. On page 84 of your packet, you'll see the language I described earlier. It says in paragraph F, synthetic plants prohibited. Synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, vines are, yeah, so that's what's prohibited. And then, or artificial turf shall not be used in lieu of the plant requirements in this section. Now, what we changed in here is to say synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, or vines are prohibited in landscaping and yards. And then the next sentence, we created artificial turf shall not be used in lieu of the plant requirements, which is consistent with the current language. And then the next sentence, we've added artificial turf may only be used consistent with the requirements of section 30-325, artificial turf. Later on, or further down on that same page, you'll see a definition. Artificial turf. And then on the next page, 85, you'll see all the standards we've included in there. We showed a draft of some of these standards to council before, actually a more robust list. But this is what we're proposing now. And again, this is specifically to artificial turf in areas that is not required to have real vegetation.
Brad, but that doesn't sound like it actually gets rid of artificial turf.
No, this allows it, because currently the code, the way it's written, allows it. So that's, the legal interpretation is that where the landscaping is required, it has to be, artificial turf is prohibited. But there are areas, if plantings that could be put in on a property that are above and beyond what is the minimum required as far as landscaping. And so the legal interpretation is that there is no prohibition on artificial turf in those cases. So based on that, we have asked council for some clarification. They gave us direction to go ahead and come up with very specific standards of how that'll apply if and when someone decides to use or apply or put artificial turf on their property in areas above and beyond where the minimum vegetation is located.
How would we go about prohibiting plastic or artificial vegetation, period? Not just where landscape requirements are concerned, but.
Understand? You could make that recommendation to city council. Just understand that that question will come up about what can qualify as a landscape feature. So if they meet the minimum requirement of a landscape requirements for a single-family lot or a commercial development, and a developer or applicant or property owner wants to do something above and beyond that, with the prohibition, it means they have no option but to put vegetation or some other feature other than synthetic vegetation on their property. That'd be prohibited entirely. So I don't know how, I'm not sure what council will say about that, but that could be your recommendation. And that would be a different ordinance.
Well, what say you on the board? Well, let's start out with Mr. Browning. Member Browning, you're up.
Well, I have a question to my fellow board members. If a citizen wants to put a small putting green in the backyard that is permeable, how does that sit with you?
I did the research on it, and I went and spoke before the Board of Adjustments and Appeals after their third approval. They really had no idea what the side effects are of this material as it breaks down in the sun here in Florida, or the fact that it sterilizes the soil underneath for several inches, killing anything that lives. So the material is not good for the environment. It's not healthy for the environment. The pieces that break down are full of PFAS and PFOs, which are exactly what we don't want going into the environment. The materials that they use for the fillers, although we have it specified here that it must be sand or natural, most of them use some sort of gum arabic that also breaks down, and it leaves toxic residues behind. So the fact of the matter is that it provides nothing to the environment that's healthy, and it does an awful lot of detriment. The argument that I made before the Board of Adjustments and Appeals was the cost. If you took the cost of doing a 1,000 square foot area of artificial turf, it's almost $10,000. Actually, the estimates that were done by the New York Times showed that they averaged around $11,000 to $12,000 for that 1,000 square foot area. Now, imagine if you took that same $10,000 or just $1,000 a year and you put that in landscape material that's actually growing and it's alive. At the end of that 10-year period, when you compare the two, you have a lot that's full of flush Florida landscape and vibrant and alive, and on the other side, you've got something that you're about to rip out and start out with a completely denuded piece of property all over again, and your investment has been completely wasted. Not only that, but it's poisoned the land around it. So there's really no benefit to this material in our landscape anywhere where the sun can get at it outdoors. So my opinion is that we really don't need this material, and it shouldn't be in our landscape, in my opinion, at all. But that's just my opinion.
I agree. I agree with that. And not the least of which is there's no attraction for any flora or fauna at all with plastic. It's breaking down, it's not doing anything for the environment, has an opportunity to get away from that site somehow, and it's not attracting or contributing to any wildlife whatsoever.
Bill, I saw your hand up there.
Yeah, I've been to.
Microphone, please.
Home Depot, and they have a
Microphone.
Okay. I've been to Lowe's and Home Depot before Christmas, and they had a poster and pieces of artificial turf up there for sale. So when we do this, can we stop them from selling that in Titusville? See, so they can sell it and somebody can bypass,
Just like the fertilizer ordinance.
Yeah, right.
just like the fertilizer ordinance, they can bypass it. And so I guess what we need to do is show a video of the people getting cancer and dying from the plastic from artificial turf. Will that help defer it?
I don't know. Oh, okay, Member Brown, it's Member Tucker?
I just wanted to ask, and you answered the question, is there any turf that has the quality that negates what you just mentioned? Obviously not, since you did the research. And the next thing I wanted to add was that after the breakdown, doesn't it enter the water column?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see who's next. Member Thompson?
So if you look on page 8 in our minutes, I think we made it very clear at our last meeting that we were not in favor of having artificial turf. Ms. Eddie Galindo said that it would take some research, but it could be done so that there was a conditional use permit that could be required, but that would need to have some changes in the land development code, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, and then the next sentence says, the Titusville Environmental Commission all agreed they do not want artificial turf used anywhere near bodies of water. Well, when it breaks down and it goes down into the groundwater, that's a body of water.
That's right.
So I think we made it pretty clear that we were not supportive of this, so.
I'm sorry, Ms. Thompson, there was language in the previous version that referred to allowing artificial turf in the setback area between the building and the shore. That language has been removed because of that comment.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Brad, could we, in your first sentence where you added are prohibited in landscaping and yards, period, can we just end it with prohibited?
If that's the commission's recommendation to council. So basically, you're rejecting this ordinance and would ask council to adopt a regulation just prohibiting synthetic vegetation, period,
Yes.
as an option. Okay.
Yes. I think that's what, I'm not sure who's up next. Member Browning, you still had your light on. Did you have anything more to add?
That's
Okay, Member Walter?
Does this include like sports fields for the schools in Titusville? Or, I don't know if any of those schools have something pending with contracts with anybody
I
or.
would never want to play on artificial turf again
I-
in my life.
I agree with you, but, I don't know, has anybody checked with the schools that they have a pending contract with somebody?
Schools are regulated separately as a development
Okay.
by state law.
Okay.
So they, depending on what they're trying to do, they may have to go through a special process with the city. I'm not familiar with any application whatsoever for artificial vegetation on a school property being reviewed or proposed at this time.
Member Burnett?
Is the result the same for the breakdown when the artificial turf is sitting on, for instance, like a patio area concrete?
It still breaks down.
Okay.
It may not break down as fast and it may not have the same effect underneath the soil because it's not on the soil. But when we're talking about artificial turf, typically we're talking about putting it outdoors. So, yeah.
Has
To be clear that we tried to put in as many criteria in here as possible that we found from other jurisdictions that allow this to really control its location. Without any kind of controls, what we've been seeing is that we get requests for variances and the Board of Adjustment struggles because there's no criteria to really go by. And sometimes they've approved these in areas that we believe are inappropriate. So we included language in here to say that it should only be located in the side or rear yard, not in the front yard, in minimum areas. And they even need to provide to us some information and manufacturing material information to help us understand the permeability rate of that material. We do that right now with pervious pavement. You know, a developer can put in pervious pavement as part of a driveway. We have in our code right now a standard for that. We don't have any such standard whatsoever for artificial turf. And that's the issue. We've been having that as an issue with variances. So the Board of Adjustment asked us, is this going to be an issue as far as percolation to the property, especially on areas where we have our wellfield protection areas? And we can't really answer that because we don't have a standard to go by.
Yeah, percolation isn't as much of an issue as the leachate. That's the real, and that's not part of the ordinance. So I'm torn on this one because I realize the value of specifying a very tight filter on how and where it is allowed. On the other hand, I don't think it should be allowed.
Is there any way that it can be monitored for breakdown? Or is it one and done? Once they get approval, that's it?
That's it.
Okay.
If it's not maintained, it's like any other landscaping or structures on properties, they're not maintained to a certain standard, then code enforcement action could be.
Yeah, they actually need to brush it, wash it. I mean, if pets pee on it, that has to be washed out. And where does that go, you know?
Well, mainly from the point of view of breakdown, the degradation of the material, will they know how to inspect for that?
We have not proposing an inspection program.
Right. I'm just saying, if that's the protocol.
If you put it in the land, around the land, in the sun, it's going to break down.
Exactly.
If the code enforcement is involved, it's most likely because the material looks like junk and debris.
Right.
And it's too late by then.
And it's too late by then. And the money's already been spent and the damage has been done and, yeah. I'm sorry, Member
right.
Walter.
Yeah, no, I agree with the band. I mean, if things change in the future and they come up with a better product that doesn't do all the damage that it does, they can reconsider and change it then. So I guess that's my feeling towards it.
Was there a card? I'm sorry. Oh, well, I'm not used to this, I guess.
So the speakers that just spoke were all on 10A, so, I mean, I can call the same cards.
No, mine, I put one separate one in for this ordinance.
Okay. Did the others want to speak, though, also? No. Then Mary Spar.
Please come, Mary.
Mary Spar, Coco. I see we're all kind of on the same page. You have to have some sort of ordinance change because at the present time, the code reads, synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, or vines shall not be used in lieu of the plant, or artificial turf. Wait, let me try again. Synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, vines, or artificial turf shall not be used in lieu of the plant requirements of this section. So the reason they're coming to the Board of Adjustment is because they're saying, oh, well, I'm not using this in lieu of the plant requirements. I've already satisfied this. So if you don't want it, it's an easy change to make, but you have to make it. And as a matter of fact, I did some research to find out when this particular item was discussed by the city council. I believe it was on August 27th, 2024. And Brad had made a comment that that particular sentence is causing the confusion, the one I just read in section 30-321F. So he knows where the fix needs to happen if you don't want artificial turf. And you would change it in the way that Michael said, or something very similar.
So Mary, you're in a agreement that we should,
Well, I'm definitely in agreement that about artificial turf. And I seem to be on the same page as all of you. But we have to have some sort of ordinance, or we'll keep getting these people who go to the Board of Adjustments. By the way, it looked like almost all of them, except the last one, had already put in their artificial turf, and then they go for the okay. What?
Yeah.
Okay, can I give you some more information? Because this is really kind of dear to my heart. Okay, so I'm not seeing any limitations on what exact parts of Titusville would be off limits to artificial turf, except that it is prohibited in the right-of-way according to the changes what staff is considering and asking your opinion about. Is artificial turf prohibited along the shoreline of the IRL? This question needs to be answered. And please note that in early 2014, Titusville passed its fertilizer ordinance. And at the time, council was very proud of being a leader in shoreline protection language. Titusville's language said and still says, fertilizer shall not be applied within 25 feet of the shoreline of the Indian River Lagoon. All the other ordinances passed up to that time along the Indian River Lagoon required only a 10-foot fertilizer-free zone. And I hope the city would take that same attitude toward artificial turf, protect the lagoon. And so what about artificial turf along the St. Johns River? My neighborhood has canals leading to the St. Johns River at Lake Poinsett. And about a year and a half ago, a new house at the end of the street was built for a snowbird from up north. And this new house had quite a bit of frontage on Lake Poinsett. It was the second largest lot in the neighborhood, much larger than most of ours. And the owner had a company, and they put about 10 rolls, big rolls of this artificial turf on his staging area. Well, they put down about 5 rolls of this artificial turf on this lot with quite a bit of Lake Poinsett frontage and then some frontage on a canal. And guess what? Brevard County made the owner have all of the 5 rolls, half of his stuff removed. They weren't going to put up with it. And what would Titusville have done in a similar case at Fox Lake or South Lake? So you already brought up the area of critical concern. I'm obviously concerned about the effects there. And I've noticed that some businesses seem to be pushing artificial turf as a new way to make money. You're not the only municipality facing this issue at this exact time. And it's not clear who might be pushing this ordinance in Titusville. But please do the right thing, and I think you know what it is.
thank you. Are there any other cards?
I don't believe so.
Okay, then we'll bring it back. As I'm looking at the wording on this, the first sentence says synthetic plants. Synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, or vines are prohibited in landscaping and yards. Period. That seems pretty straightforward, because I see artificial turf as a ground cover. Is that not the way you see it, Brad?
Are you on paragraph F?
I'm on F, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it says synthetic plants prohibited. Synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, or vines are prohibited in landscaping and yards, period. Now, I see artificial turf as a ground cover.
Yes.
Do you not see it as a ground cover?
I do.
Okay, so is that not inconsistent then with artificial turf may only be used consistent with the requirements in section whatever, when we just flat out said no? I
You
that's-
mean the current language prohibits it, is how you interpret it?
I'm saying the modified language you're proposing,
Okay.
I'll read it again. Synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, or vines are prohibited in landscaping and yards.
Okay. But the next sentence says artificial turf shall not be used in lieu of the plant requirements. in
But
this
that's
section.
in direct conflict with ground cover shall be prohibited, you see. You can't prohibit it and permit it at the same time.
Yeah, the legal interpretation that we've received is that this is, the current language as is written right now only applies to what is required as far as minimum landscaping. So what we're trying to do is that, well, if someone wanted to put put plants on their property that are above and beyond what's required, but they want to put fake vegetation.
We could
then
make
did
it very
provide-
clear in the next sentence where it says artificial turf shall not be used in lieu of the plant requirements in this section. We can simply strike that last half and say artificial turf shall not be used, period.
But you're trying to prohibit it altogether?
I'm trying to prohibit it altogether. I don't think we should have any plastic material, plant-like or whatever, out in our environments.
Okay. You could say, let me just start over here. Synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, or vines are prohibited on any property for landscaping purposes or something like that.
Well, that's what it says.
Yeah, that's not the legal interpretation that we got. That's why we're here today.
That's strange, because that's the plain letter law of what it says.
Yeah. If that was the case, we wouldn't be with this ordinance right
Wish
now.
Chelsea
So,
was here.
yeah.
Well, then I'd like to get an understanding of how this reads, because to me, the plain letter law of this, the English of this first sentence is very clear that synthetic plants are prohibited, whether they're artificial trees, shrubs, or ground covers or vines.
So you're reading it without the strike through and underline?
I'm reading it with the underlines added.
Okay.
There are no strike-throughs other than, actually, there is no strike-through other than you took out or and started a new sentence with artificial turf shall not be used in lieu of plant requirements in this section. You could simply make that artificial turf shall not be used.
You could get rid of the two sentences, just keep the first sentence only.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what you said. Okay,
I think
all
the
right.
first sentence says it completely. Adding artificial turf just muddies the water because we already said it was prohibited.
We were trying to keep the language as is, as the intent and plain meaning, and to allow vegetation that would be artificial beyond what's required.
Why?
I think, because that's what the legal interpretation we got on the language that's currently written in the code says that. That's how it's written. It says, synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, vines, or artificial turf shall not be used in lieu of the plant requirements in this section. Plant requirements.
Right.
If they want to put vegetation beyond what's required, there's no prohibition for artificial vegetation. That's the legal interpretation. That's the interpretation we received and understand.
Right. But then you modified it and you split the two sentences. So you took the part about the artificial turf and the plant requirements and removed that. So now the first sentence with your modifications is very clear, and you could drop the second two sentences completely.
Okay, so that's what you're suggesting as far as we're prohibiting it altogether, is just keep the first sentence and eliminate the last two sentences.
Yeah, the only thing I would
Okay.
say was I'd make sure that artificial turf is ground cover, that it's.
Understand. If that's your recommendation, and then that could be the commission's joint recommendation to city council on this. To clarify this language, you're pretty much saying that it is prohibited respective of whether it's in the required vegetation or
Right.
beyond that. It's just prohibited as an option, period.
Does everybody agree with that? Or
Okay.
we have one accord?
So then we would get rid
Yeah.
of all of that,
We would get rid of the
all of the
second.
stuff on page 85 goes away?
Well, F gets reduced. We would strike it from the end of the period after landscaping and yards.
Yeah, you would just keep the first sentence there that I've created.
Right,
That's it.
right. You wouldn't even need the 3325.
Right. We wouldn't need the second sentence, the third sentence, and
Right.
the whole new section I created.
Right.
Okay.
That keeps it simple. Okay, I'll entertain a motion, perhaps?
Should we clarify in the whereases why we are prohibiting artificial turf?
That could be, that's something we could create, because that would be part of your motion, and we'll put that in the whereas clause that TEC recommended.
Okay.
That's possible.
Member Browning?
You're asking me for a motion.
Oh,
I'll make
yeah.
a motion.
Okay.
Oh, you saw my light on.
I did, I saw your light on, so
I'm sorry.
okay. Member Walter? Did you?
No,
I just want to, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. I just want to be clear. The way this is going to go before our city council is you have this version, and then we have TEC's recommendation with it as to what it will look like. And then if they support that, then the ordinance will be revised consistent with that.
And we'll see it again.
Well, I agree. I think we got to keep it as simple as possible so there's no loopholes.
And the science behind what we're talking about is sound. We can't control the degradation of the plastic. And it is going to degrade. It's going to get into the soil, and water flows downhill.
Where'd Stan go? Yes, water
So-
flows downhill.
Can I make a motion?
Please make a motion.
I make a motion that we delete in its entirety section 30-325, artificial turf. And going back to
Including the definition?
F,
Yeah,
F, that
Yes.
we only have the first sentence and the last two are struck in their entirety. So it says synthetic plants prohibited, synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, ground covers, or vines are prohibited in landscaping and yards, period. And it's simple. It has an environmental basis that we all understand and can stand by and talk about to our neighbors on the street corner.
yes,
And there's going to be people that are going to want to do it anyway.
yes.
But our thinking is sound, I think, that we got to keep plastic out of the environment as much as possible. It has indoor applications.
Okay, that's getting to be a really long motion. We need a
Okay.
second.
All right, strike, the motion, clarify, it's to strike section 3325 in its
Right.
entirety. And on the plant materials definitions, under synthetic plants, just keep the first sentence, delete the last two.
Okay. I have a second?
Second.
Second. All right. Any other discussions? You were on a roll there, Member Browning. Please.
Okay, I certainly agree with all this. I'm just wondering, I've seen all of this before. If you leave something to the imagination and out of the language, then people are going to wonder again, shouldn't you put ground covers, artificial turf?
Such as artificial turf?
Oh, yeah, such as artificial turf, or something like to get the words artificial turf in there, so they'll now know that they can't do it. And we won't have these people coming to the Board of Adjustment after the fact. They just include those words. Or, oh, this says nothing about artificial turf,
Yes, I agree. It's still synthetic. That's true. Member Thompson, you have your light on?
Yeah, and so I think that it would make, the sentence would read better if you change the order a little bit and say synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, vines, or ground covers, parentheses, including artificial turf, close parentheses, are prohibited in landscaping and yards.
That sounds like a good friendly amendment. Is there a second to that would accept that as will you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
And
Second.
will the second hold too?
Second.
Okay, so I need a second for Laura Lee's amendment if there is one.
Can,
Okay.
can you repeat the new language you're suggesting?
Yes, it would say synthetic plants prohibited, synthetic or artificial material in the form of trees, shrubs, vines, or ground covers, open parentheses, such as artificial turf, close parentheses, are prohibited in landscaping and yards. And I would leave the artificial turf definition in there so that it's really clear.
The one down below?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And don't lose your criteria there if city council wants to keep that. I think the criteria listing that you have for excluding cases of where and when, I think is still valid, so I wouldn't.
So you're suggesting?
No, I'm not saying, we're
Okay.
talking about removing it here because it doesn't apply here. But I think you should save it.
Oh, okay. Yes, we'll hold on to it.
Hold it on the back burner in case council wants to put it back in. Okay, so we've got a couple of motions and a couple of seconds. And is there any other discussion? Okay, Lori, can we have a roll call vote, please? Well, we just vote on the final, the amended motion.
Member Burdette?
Yes.
Member Walter? Yes. Member Coste?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Thompson?
Yes.
Member Browning?
Yes.
Member Tucker?
Yes.
Chairman Majak?
Yes. Excellent. A comment after the fact? Yes, after the fact. Please, we have time.
I just hope when this comes before council that Michael Majak will give his same reasoning that he gave to the Board of Adjustment and Appeal, the scientific reason why when this breaks down, it should not be used, artificial turf should not be used because of the science behind
Yeah,
it.
it
If you could-
belongs in a lined landfill.
Yeah, and it's going to be put in the landfill, and then it's going to break down even more and contaminate even more. So if you could please explain to them that when it goes before council, maybe they'll understand it more thoroughly. Thank you.
Brad, when is this going before council?
I believe next month we'll be able to get it to them.
Okay.
I'd like to see if we can get it to them at the next meeting, but we'll try.
You'll have to get Naira's permission for me to be there.
Can you let us know when it's going in front of council,
Yeah,
please?
because we can speak
Thank
on
you.
that.
I do have one other portion of a staff report. I've already introduced Lily as our new staff member. I just want to give her an opportunity to introduce herself.
Hello. I don't know. First time using this. So I feel you guys this is my first meeting too. My name's Lily, and I'm the new sustainability program coordinator for you guys. I was hired last month, so this is all very, very new. But I have worked for about 10 years, mostly in the communications field. My background is a master's in natural resources from Virginia Tech, and I have a certificate in sustainability from Virginia Tech as well.
Go Hokies.
Yeah, go Hokies. So yes, I did move here with the space. I noticed your jacket with the space families coming here with SpaceX and all of them. So that's kind of what brought me here a couple years ago, and just got started with the city. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I'm going to give you some updates in the past just month from, I don't feel like this is loud enough. Okay. We were awarded the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services grant, the Urban and Community Forestry Grant. And we're just currently waiting on the contract for that. So once we get that back, we'll have money for urban forestry. And then the FDEP vulnerability assessment is moving along as well. We just submitted the quarterly report to them, and the first public engagement meeting will be happening in February. And then I'm also working with our GIS Maps team to feature the LID projects going on. If that's something that interests you, it's definitely been interesting me. And yeah, thank you.
I can tell you what's going to be on your next agenda, including the one that we missed. So here's what we got so far. The Natural Resources Report, obviously, will be on the February 12th agenda. Your bylaws will be a second agenda. A third one, which we missed from the last time, is called to discuss the fountain functionality and the use of bubblers in stormwater ponds. And then another discussion item you have is a native municipal tree canopy and landscape management trust fund. And if I'm able to get one of the other two ordinances ready with our comments, we'll bring that to you as well. So it's a lot on your agenda. I'm not sure you'll be able to cover all of it, but that's what you got.
Should turn my microphone on. Yeah, I think we can do that at the next meeting. Again, that's one of those things that we need to be discussing. It's going to take us several months. So spending 10 or 15 minutes to talk about it and then move on is not a bad idea, especially with the number of new members we have going forward.
Chair,
Yes.
did we not say we were going to talk about bubblers next month
Yeah,
also?
that's on the agenda.
that-
Yes.
That's within the natural resources.
Well, it might have been one of the recommendations, but it's actually going to be a separate agenda item at your next meeting.
Yes.
It'll be on the agenda for you to discuss.
What are we titling that? How's it?
I've got it, it was in the minutes from the last meeting you had. You asked for it to be on the agenda. We just failed to put it on tonight. But it specifically says, discuss fountain functionality and the use of bubblers in stormwater ponds.
Right. This was based on when I went to Woods Hole last summer, on my way up north. I got a chance to look at some of the research that they're doing and what they found. It's interesting seeing the differences in their estuary and the problems they have versus the problems we have. Ours are shallow, theirs are not, but we still have the same problem of loss of seagrass and eutrophication. You know, we still have the same problems of too many septic tanks, unprepared, golf course runoff, things like that. And it's causing a problem worldwide. So the fact that they showed that the fountains were mostly ineffective other than at the very surface level, but that the bubblers were able to move 95% of the water column, 98% of the water column by themselves, was worthwhile. And I thought that given Mr. Johnson's complaint about the fountains and that bubblers were so much more effective and so less costly than fountains are, that was a discussion that we should have and start to form a policy statement on. So that's why it's coming forth on the agenda.
After they finally did turn the fountain off, after the 700 million gallon sewer spill, they put 4 bubblers in that pond, and they stayed there for months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're effective. They truly are. What else for the agenda? Anything? No other topics? Okay. Here's an IRL symposium coming up at the end of the month, but that's not for us. So, okay. No other agenda items, and then I guess we'll go down the line and say member reports. You want to start down there, Bill? Do you have any report to make for the TEC? Nope. Nope. Next? Nope. Nope. Nobody? Oh, Laura Lee has one. Yeah, I already have one. so-
Lori, did you get one of these economic development?
Yeah.
She did?
Okay.
Okay. So we got one here for Bill. But I'm not going to climb down there, but make sure you get it before we go.
Yes,
So,
Bill, this is for you. You got the emails that I sent out about the 1,000 Friends of Florida PowerPoint presentation? Yeah, I think I did. Okay, the new guys probably didn't, but this is a report that Laura Lee's passing out, was given there, and I wanted to make sure we discussed it, so go ahead.
Oh, yeah, okay, so this report, was done for the 1,000 Friends of Florida, and you can see the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation that was given by the people that developed the report. It's really, really good. You can go on 1,000 Friends of Florida and go into their archived presentations, and you can find it. But I was so impressed with it that I've had 40 copies made, went to Staples and paid to have 40 copies of it made, because I thought it would be really helpful. It basically, says that compact development, walkable areas near a downtown produce more tax revenue than low-density suburban areas. And so by centering your development close to your downtown, and that could involve some high rises, but by doing that, you can preserve your countryside and not have all this suburban sprawl. And not only does that, help control the suburban sprawl, it actually puts the community in a position where they're not scrambling to pay for infrastructure like sewer and stormwater and all of that. And so I gave some to the Planning and Zoning Board. They made it an agenda item for the future. They were so impressed with it. And I gave them to the city council members last night, and now I'm giving it to you guys. But take the time, to read through it. It's fascinating. It has a lot of language in it about things that are near and dear to me, like trees, having parks and, green spaces spread throughout the community. It's a very well-written thing, and it's pretty convincing. So that's my gift to you.
One of the things that I liked about it is on page 7, there's a graph that basically shows the revenue versus expenditures. And it shows you how as the city becomes more dense, that there becomes more of a surplus, whereas the majority of our urban sprawl here in the central part doesn't pay for itself. It basically means that the city services that are being provided are not being covered by the tax revenue of those homes. So from the city's perspective, it's better to try to coalesce together. Yes, Bill? Microphone, please.
She's hitting him out.
Oh, okay. Bill needs one if you,
Well, you had one for
I
Bill.
got this extra one here. Oh,
You
Hey,
got
just-
one already.
you need to become a regular member. Get up here on the board.
Or at least sit further down south on the table where we can
Can
see your
you.
light.
Yeah,
The air conditioner blows on me.
Okay, okay.
problems. Always have a problem child. Anyway, what I would highly recommend that you all go to 1,000 Friends of Florida, 1000FOF.org, and watch this presentation. The takeaway that I came with is that we have been striving to find a set of metrics to measure our growth, our environment, our health, and well-being. And this provides a mechanism with which we can do that in a financial sense. So we can use these metrics. I'm sure the city's going to be using these metrics to determine which it should and which ones it shouldn't approve as far as future development, we'll be able to tell if that development's going to be a benefit to the city or a hindrance. So those same kind of metrics, I think, can also be applied to our environment. And I think we could be doing things like, simple things like how many trees did we plant this year? How many trees did we remove? You know, simple balanced equation. I'd like to know, you know. So things like that we can use to control how we grow and how we go forward and how we define those metrics. So I wouldn't mind putting this on an agenda item just to be able to talk about that and see how we can wheedle some of the information out of this into that. 100 years of completed projects. Oh, yeah, Sandpoint Park, February 1st. We should talk about that. Yeah, so this is the Sorrel, right? Sorrel program. Okay, 100th project completed will be celebrated at Sandpoint Park on February 1st, 2025 from 10 to 2:30 p.m. There will be a clam pickup, or is that a toss-off?
No, you can pick up clams, and then they're going to line people up on the causeway, and we get to throw our clams in the water.
Into the water.
Yeah.
Okay. So the pickup is at 10:15, the causeway lineup is at 10:30, and clams get released at 11. Hope they notify the people underneath the bridge. Okay. Anything else anybody
Well,
wants
this is
to
a
add?
big deal.
It is a big
I mean, it's an honor for Titusville. It really is.
Well,
You know, we as far as the Sorrel projects, the city of Titusville has completed more Sorrel projects than any other city in the county.
yes.
And that might be one of the reasons that they picked us. I think they want to show off the wave attenuation devices that are going in the water and the barge and all that activity that's going on.
Yeah.
So this is a real honor for city of Titusville
It sure is.
to be selected for this, and I hope everybody will go to it.
I plan to be there. Brad sent it out. by
Brad sent it
email.
out, but you weren't a
But
member
you
yet.
weren't a
Maybe
member
Brad
yet,
can
so-
resend it.
It's also on the city website, and I also put it in the community development newsletter. So
Okay.
the public should know.
Yes, the public should know.
Friday is the Arbor Day event at Pritchard House.
That's right. We got, is that 11 o'clock?
Tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Day after tomorrow.
Friday. I said tomorrow, Friday. Tomorrow's Thursday. I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry.
That's why I'm confused.
Because I'm ancient, I can't remember. But anyway, 2 days from now.
Gotcha. Okay, Friday, Pritchard House, 11 o'clock, right? Yeah. You have a, okay, Laura Lee? You have a conflict?
Yeah.
Oh, the Sorrel meeting's that Friday, yeah, well, I'll be there, and I think Tom's gonna be there, and Kay's gonna be there. Who else is gonna be there? Roz is gonna be there. Y'all come out to the Pritchard House, Friday, 11 o'clock. Honor our Arbor Day.
Michael can have that.
Michael can have that.
I already know about it.
If there's nothing else, then I'll call it adjourned, and we'll see you guys next month.